When Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian American in Congress, was censured by the House in early November over what some lawmakers called her rhetoric around the Israeli-Hamas war, 22 Democrats joined Republicans in that censure vote. 18 of those Democrats received campaign funds from AIPAC in 2022, totaling more than $1.1 million. By the way, for these 6 of them, AIPAC was their top contributor.
Well, AIPAC has been so powerful in political campaigning and has captured so many politicians on both the left and the right that now progressives have decided to enter a coalition of progressive groups to fight back. Now, AIPAC is planning on spending $100 million to defeat progressives who the group feels just have not been sufficiently loyal or supportive to Israel. And so now the progressives are fighting back with this coalition called Reject AIPAC. Now, what are they planning to do? The Reject AIPAC coalition promises a 7-figure electoral defense campaign aimed at shoring up members of Congress who are targeted by the pro-Israel group. It also wants members of Congress to sign a pledge to not accept any more money from the organization, explicitly seeking to frame AIPAC in a similarly controversial light as the National Rifle Association. Now, in a statement announcing the launch of this new coalition, its members said, quote, "We have watched as AIPAC has done everything it can to silence growing dissent in Congress against Netanyahu's assault on Gaza, which has killed over 31,000 Palestinians, even as Democratic voters overwhelmingly support a ceasefire and oppose sending more blank checks to the Israeli military. Now is the time for the whole of the Democratic Party to reject AIPAC once and for all." Now, before we move on, I think it's important to just take a step back and just understand, really fully grasp how influential AIPAC has been. In fact, they nearly defeated a progressive during the midterm elections. Let's take a look at that.
As progressive lawmakers began calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, Slate reported that insiders expect AIPAC's 2024 spending to hit $100 million. In fact, United Democracy Project, which is a pro-Israel super PAC affiliated with AIPAC, is already spending money on attack ads against Democratic Representatives Jamal Bowman of New York and Summer Lee of Pennsylvania. Lee has already got a primary challenger, as do Cori Bush and Ilhan Omar. Pro-Israel donors have already signaled that they're eager to primary Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Congresswoman Lee already overcame AIPAC's financial influence against her once. She tweeted criticisms of Israel's treatment of Palestinians in 2021, but as a candidate, she affirmed Israel's right to exist. But that's not good enough. AIPAC spent nearly $3 million in the primary alone to defeat Lee, and they almost did. She beat Stephen Irwin, who is 3rd on the list of money given to candidates by AIPAC in 2022 by less than 1,000 votes.
Now, other incumbents were not so lucky. We're gonna get to that in just a moment. But Cenk, how effective do you think this coalition of progressive groups will be in kind of fighting back against AIPAC's influence?
A lot of mainstream media don't give you honest news. We do, you know why? Because of you. Paid membership on YouTube makes all the difference. Hit the join button below and you become the hero that sustains us. Number one, I don't know. So just to be honest with you guys, because this all depends on how much money they raise. But if they raise good money, it's at least a pushback. But even without knowing how well they're going to do, this is an excellent development.
Yes, I agree.
Okay,
yep.
So it's an excellent development for a number of reasons. Number one, look at all those progressive groups working together. I almost never see that. And so like I'm shocked that they put their egos aside, etc., to work together. So thank you guys for doing that.
Yes.
Look at Justice Democrats doing something positive in the world. Thank you for doing that. Great, okay, Sunrise Movement, others as well, right? So now the second good news. Look at Ali Veshi doing a report on money and politics and talking about support of the right-wing government of Israel on MSNBC. That is an unprecedented segment. Yeah. That was, so credit to MSNBC for airing that. Credit to Velshi for putting that segment together. It is factual and really important that people understand that context.
It was well done, to say the least. And it's available on YouTube for anyone who wants to watch the entirety of that segment.
Yeah, and now the third positive development out of this. For the first time in my life, AIPAC, and any lobbyist is being challenged. Because like NRA, to be fair, once they stopped giving to the Democrats, because they used to give to both parties, once they stopped giving to the Democrats, then the NRA got challenged because then the Democrats didn't need to protect them anymore, right? So that's one set of lobbyists that were attacked in my lifetime. But everyone else, I mean, the bank lobbies, the drug lobby is so gigantic and is never called out by either side, et cetera, et cetera. But of all things, AIPAC getting called out.
I love it.
Yeah, that is a giant development in American politics. It would have never been allowed before. There's no way MSNBC would have aired that. There's no way any group in Washington would have signed on for it. So young people are beginning to make a difference, and those Justice Democrat legislators, apparently it made enough difference, at least on this issue, that they got folks spending $100 million to try to get him out. So credit where credit is due.
So just a little more information on the coalition of progressive groups that's now being called Reject AIPAC. So there are more than 20 progressive groups involved in this, including the Justice Democrats, as Cenk mentioned, the Working Families Party, the Sunrise Movement, Jewish Voice for Peace Action, and the Democratic Socialists of America. These groups are all working together, and I agree with you, Cenk. One of the illnesses I've noticed among progressives in America is that they don't like working together. And you do need to work together and strategize and organize in order to accomplish legislative goals. And in this case, political goals in mitigating some of the impact that AIPAC has over our elections. Now, I mentioned earlier that Summer Lee was fortunate enough to be able to win in the midterms, even with AIPAC spending all that money against her. However, others have not been so lucky. So I just want to give you an example of a Democrat who ended up getting voted out of office as a result of AIPAC's funding of his challenger. Let's watch.
Michigan Democrat Haley Stevens unseated Democratic Representative Andy Levin. Here's what Levin had to say about that.
I'm really Jewish, but AIPAC can't stand the idea that I am the clearest, strongest Jewish voice in Congress, standing for a simple proposition that there's no way to have a secure democratic homeland for the Jewish people unless we achieve the political and human rights of the Palestinian people.
AIPAC spent $4 million against Levin. He lost by 20 points.
Oh, that is brutal.
Yeah, to give you a sense of how much this money makes a difference, the other group candidate that these set of lobbyists, including Democratic Majority for Israel, they're kind of an umbrella. AIPAC's kind of an umbrella organization for a lot of these other lobbyists and groups that are aligned on the same issue. They spent around $4 million against Nina Turner. She had a 35-point lead. They reversed that and she barely lost. Yeah. So that's a 40-point reversal there. It's at least 20, 30-point reversal in Andy Levin's race, because $4 million in a congressional district is a giant amount of money, right? And Andy Levin was a popular, likable incumbent. There was no reason for him to lose at all. And so, in fact, I think Andy Levin was their largest mistake. And AIPAC, for the first time again in my lifetime, went too far, even for Washington. Because you attack Nina Turner or random progressives they hadn't heard of at that time, Summer Lee hadn't won yet. Summer Lee, Jamal Bowman, no one cares if you attack them in Washington, right? Nina Turner, they're gonna kind of like you if you attack her because they can't stand that she actually wants to change things, right? But attacking Andy Levin, who was a perfectly fine incumbent Democrat, that rankled a lot of people in the Democratic Party. And that made them go, oh, so now these guys might come after me. No. And that's why I've noticed a lot of people that I would never expect criticizing AIPAC, like Chris Van Hollen, senator from Maryland. I'm like, what are you doing, brother? And a couple other senators that I would have never expected, because AIPAC is now basically saying we're right-wingers, we're Republicans, and we're gonna take you out one by one. We'll start with the progressives, but then we'll go as far as we need to, and they're funded by giant Republican billionaires.
Yes, okay, so that's the last thing I want to mention because I think it's important. I think the reason why we're noticing a few more Democrats being willing to speak out against AIPAC is because of how some of the organizations that fall under the umbrella of AIPAC are funded. So we briefly mentioned earlier that the United Democracy Project is one of those AIPAC associated groups, and they're planning on spending a lot of money. For instance, they spent more than $26 million during the 2022 election cycle, according to Open Secrets, which tracks political spending. FEC filings show that the group ended January with almost $42 million cash on hand. Now, if you're wondering where they're getting that money from, I'm about to tell you. So the foundation set up by Bernie Marcus, the billionaire co-founder of Home Depot and a vocal supporter of former President Trump, has donated $2 million to the United Democracy Project this cycle, on top of $1 million in the 2022 cycle. And that's, again, according to Open Secrets. Elliott Management, the investment firm headed by Republican billionaire donor Paul Singer, has contributed $2 million across those two cycles. So you have Republicans funding an AIPAC-associated group that is spending money to defeat Democrats in Congress who aren't sufficiently loyal to a foreign government, Israel.
Yeah, they're making the NRA mistake. They're going too partisan in one direction, which allows the other party to criticize them. Usually buying off both parties is a much smarter strategy, but they just got too ambitious in wanting to dominate. And they have Republican donors that are probably telling them, give me two birds with one stone, take out anyone who dares to criticize Israel, plus give me more Republicans in Congress. And that's why they named the second group Democratic Majority for Israel. Now, none of this addresses the fact that they're all doing this very openly and brazenly on behalf of a foreign government. If you did the same thing, except you did it on behalf of Iran or China or Russia, people would lose their minds. And even if you chose an ally, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Oh, Qatar would like to buy off all your politicians. And if you dare criticize Qatar, they'll spend $4 million. I'm sorry, their allies in America will spend $4 million to eliminate any politician that dares to disagree with that country led by Muslim fundamentalists. We'd all say that's crazy. But when Israel does it, everybody in Washington is like, bravo, of course, wonderful, wonderful, right? And for the first time, they're saying not wonderful.
Yeah.
And the last great part of this story is that as they're revealing what AIPAC is doing, they're also revealing how money in politics works. And so, because you and I, if you are online, you watch this show, you know that money in politics controls everything, right? No matter what the industry, what the donors, etc. But people that watch cable news, they barely know that. They almost never ever see a story about how money influences an election. For example, they'll hear that Nina Turner lost and they'll be like, oh good, people didn't like her ideas. It's absurd, it had nothing to do with ideas. It was smear ads that were run on every television station in Cleveland 24/7 until that's all that anybody thought they knew about Nina Turner. So now they're beginning to see the MSNBC audience, the New York Times audience is like, it looks like the money's buying the elections completely. Yeah, that's how money in politics works. That's why we don't have a democracy, we have an open auction.